couple of guys undefeated on this card are Umar Nurmagomedov, Shavkat Rakhmonov. You add the records up, it's 29-0, and 15 of those wins go to the Nomad, the former M1 Global welterweight champ, the reigning and then defending and then UFC fighter is Rakhmonov. 3 fights inside the UFC, one over Alex Oliveira, one against Michel Prazeres, which is a meme. I think it's a meme. It's a meme in my world. And then his last time out, he took on Carlston Harris, a very well-rounded fighter. He's tricky on the feet. He's great with his grappling. Shavkat went finish, 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 and then he got a bonus his last time out. How wild is that? I mean, it's insane.
Okay, I said before the Carlston Harris fight that I think Shavkat Rakhmonov could beat Khamzat Chimaev. And a lot of people, including the man to my right, said I was ridiculous for saying that. Now, Khamzat had not fought Gilbert Burns yet, so we didn't really know what we know now. I'm feeling pretty good about that statement all of a sudden, though, because Shavkat Rakhmonov really is one of the most exciting prospects in the whole entire sport, and it is really nice that he's finally getting his due against a ranked opponent, but there really is a key in that 3-fight win streak that you bring up. All 3 of the fighters he beat were amazing. Like, I know Prazeres was a little bit older in his career, but I would say the 3 wins he has in the UFC are over fairly good fighters for it being his first 3 fights, and I do think that those are 3 good opponents to get you ready for ranked opponents, because Alex Oliveira, a rangy striker, you gotta get used to that. Michel Prazeres, a much more compact wrestler, basically the exact opposite.
Not great at passing drug tests.
Not great at passing drug tests whatsoever. Not good at making weight. Really good at being like the strongest man ever at 155 to 170, though. I will give him that credit. And Carlston Harris, who definitely didn't have the fanfare behind him going into that fight, but I think the people who know how good of a fighter he is. Shavkat Rakhmonov wheel kicked him and then ground and pounded him and sent him, to quote Luke Thomas, into the land of wind and ghosts. And that's the wild thing about Rakhmonov. When you look at his record, 15-0, yes, that looks really nice, but then you look at the breakdown of his record and you figure out that, yes, he can get it done on the feet, he can get it done on the mat too, and against good grapplers, which is the wildest thing, because for how good Prazeres is, he's a wicked grappler. I never thought in a million years Shavkat would be able to submit a guy like him. He beat him by a rear naked choke in the second round.
Yeah, the craziest part about it for Rakhmonov, because for Neil Magny, and we'll touch on it, he's been in the UFC since 2013, 19-7 record. He had a 7-fight win streak, capped off by 2 performance of the night bonuses, then took on Damian Maia on the undercard of a big card. Both cards. When he debuted,
94.
Ronda Rousey taking on a big time out in, who is it? Liz Carmouche. That was the first big-time title fight. Wowee. And then you look at it, UFC 190 was the fight against Damian Maia. And in that one, that was on the prelims, and Magny loses to Maia. But all of that said, Magny, tough guy, actual veteran, longtime UFC veteran. His craziest fight, I'd say, was the fight where he got knocked down twice against Hector Lombard. Rallied and finished him. But all of this goes to say that Neil Magny recently, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. A loss to Michael Chiesa on daytime television, because that was a weird Fight Island card that was on a Wednesday. But some really nice wins. Obviously, Robbie Lawler, great feather to have in your cap. But Neil Magny, very similar every time in, time out. Understands his length. Uses his range well. Good on the in-betweens. Good with his grappling unless he's taking on a really upper echelon grappler. Good in his striking unless he's taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio in a main event. But when it comes down to this fight, I look at Neil Magny as very steady, very similar fight in, fight out. Shavkat, similar, but he's made some gains here and there. And since he's switched over to Sanford MMA, he's turned things up a little bit. His defensive striking has gained. He was a guy that he could use his jab, but he does stand kind of square when he walks guys down. And he is a right-hand dominant type of guy. He does fight from the orthodox stance, but he is square. He is there to be hit. Thiago Verjao was able to do it. A few other guys on the way up when he was with M1 Global could hit him, daze him. Shavkat would come back, work in some of his grappling, work in some of his striking, get the wins. But Shavkat has accentuated kicks to all 3 levels. He's worked in his boxing a little bit more. He waits to download his opponent's game plan, which Neil Magny will do, so they could cancel out in certain circumstances. But I think this fight is going to be a lot of fun, and I think we're going to learn more about Shavkat Rakhmonov this week.
Without a doubt, because that's, again, this is a big point of mine. At the upper echelon of MMA, I don't really care what your strengths are. Yes, they're great, but for the most part, once you get to that point, we all know what you're good at. It matters what your weaknesses are, because everybody's still well-rounded. They can take the fight anywheres. They're going to figure out where you're not strongest, and they're going to try to exploit that. Now, for Neil Magny, I mean this is a compliment, but he's almost consistent in the worst way possible, because, like you said, we do know what he's going to do. He's a good wrestler. He's a good striker. There's not any one part of his game that's very weak. But because there's no one area of his game that's all that strong either, we do know that the guys who are specialists can really give him trouble. You bring it up, Damian Maia on the mat. No, of course, Maia's going to give a lot of guys trouble. RDA too.
Sweeps.
He hit him with that leg kick, immediately got on top, submitted him. Neil Magny also struggles with guys who are pure strikers, and people might think that I'm hyping up Shavkat a little bit too much right now. Shavkat, I think, is as good of a striker as Santiago Ponzinibbio. At least as good as Ponzinibbio is at this stage of his career. And I know Ponzinibbio, before he got hurt so many times, was a different fighter than the guy we see now, but Shavkat at 27 really is that special kind of a fighter. They're not giving him Neil Magny in his 4th UFC fight because they think he's just going to be another guy like an Alexander Hernandez, and they're just giving him a big shot. Like, Shavkat has looked great against good fighters at the UFC level. The thing I'm curious about, though, is where does he have the most confidence in this fight? Because we bring up, he is a good grappler, he is a good striker. I think Neil Magny's bread and butter is more his striking on the feet. I think he will try to get some volume, especially early on in this fight. I just don't think Neil Magny can avoid the big shot for 15 minutes, and that's the thing. If he does get hit and dazed, Shavkat can finish you with his strikes or with his submissions, and he is the type of fighter who can do it in an intelligent manner. We used to talk about Jeff Neal all the time, about how he throws straight shots, he's very technical when he gets a guy hurt. Shavkat's cut from that same cloth. The difference is, if you're hurt and go to your back, he can follow you down to the mat and cause even more damage.
And the trouble with that statement is, Jeff Neal's great at all of those things, and when he took on Neil Magny mixed it up, and he was able to land on the feet.
But that's the thing, Jeff Neal does not have the grappling aspect of his game that Shavkat does. Shavkat's like if you had the striking of Jeff Neal, Santiago Ponzinibbio, and you added the grappling of almost like a Nick Lenz.
Yeah, it really is tricky. And for Rakhmonov, he's one of those guys that he can even, and we haven't seen it in the UFC, but he can even struggle with some of his own takedown defense, and he can use it as a little bit of a crutch to work some of his submissions, I guess, so to speak. But it is an odd factor that we've seen him kind of shore up, or it's been glorified, I guess, through the 3 finishes in the UFC. But it's one of those things. We'll see if Neil Magny actually does go for the takedowns and is successful with them as well.
I'd be terrified to fight Rakhmonov. I know I sound like this big fanboy, but I'm not. It's just like, stylistically, this guy's a problem for a lot of people in the top 15. You bring it up. Straight shots in the feet. Very technical boxer. Has ridiculous kicks when he lets them go. And the big thing about Rakhmonov, too, is he sets up his power shots. How many times in MMA do we see guys just wing big punches and hope for the best? All the time in every single fight. Shavkat will work behind his jab, try to blind you with his jab, and then hit you with the big shot that'll really make the difference in the fight.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a big right hand. It could be a kick to the body when you start to bring your defenses up. It really does get tricky that way. And if you look at it for Neil Magny, last time he got a finish win was over, my God, like he completely derailed his career. It was a Thundercat Craig White. And White's gone on to lose 5 fights in a row, where Neil Magny's gone on to have a hell of a career. I'm not trying to laugh, but I do look at this one, Matt. I mean, Shavkat open to minus 275 favorite, minus 398 right now. For Neil Magny, open to plus 235, plus 300. The guy has 28 UFC fights, and he's that big of an underdog against the undefeated Rakhmonov. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Sometimes fan vote goes hand in hand, so I do expect the fans to have Rakhmonov. I'm going to say over-under 80% Rakhmonov, 82.5% Rakhmonov.
Weird that you'd switch it up for the 2.5%. I'll say above.
You're going to say above? It is. So 648 total votes, 90% Rakhmonov, 18% decision, 21% submission, 56% by knockout. Those percentages don't add up, but it is what it is. For the 10% that have Magny, 73% by decision, 13% by knockout. I think if Neil Magny wins, it's going to be a grimy decision. If he does win, obviously he was dropped in his last fight against Max Griffin. He won a split decision. He beat Jeff Neal, mixing in the wrestling, using his volume. If Rakhmonov can't figure out that distance, again, 3 inches in the difference is the reach, but Neil Magny's a guy that understands that reach advantage and his height. Some people don't, but Neil Magny, when you crowd him, can have issues. Now, again, I said he's good in the clinch. He's good up against the fence. But sometimes when you crowd him, he doesn't deal all that well with the uppercuts and the knees to the body. Rakhmonov's a guy training out of Sanford now that I think they're going to tune him up. A guy like Jason Jackson, perfect to train with, getting ready for a fight like this.
Here's the thing I'll say about Neil Magny's distance management. I'm going to zag a little bit. He's normally 7 inches taller than everyone he fights, so it's easy to fight tall when you're that much bigger than everyone at this division. Shavkat's 6'1". He's a big welterweight himself, so I don't think Neil Magny's going to have those traditional physical advantages that he normally has in the cage, and that's why I do think Rakhmonov can have success at his own kicking range, because his kicking range is going to be Neil Magny's jabbing range, and Neil Magny doesn't check leg kicks. Shavkat Rakhmonov can kick like a mule. So I just really think, stylistically, this is a tough fight for Neil Magny. It almost feels like Dana White doesn't want him in the rankings anymore. He's just sitting back being like, how can we get rid of Neil Magny? Because Magny, when he does have success against these guys coming up with the rankings, let's use some examples before we cut this video off. He beat Li Jingliang by closing the distance, using his clinch, getting into elbow range, smothered the fire so it never has time to burn, and he did the exact same thing against Rocco Martin, too.
Rocco kind of came at him.
But he was doing a really good job instead of just trying to run away from Rocco and let him chase you, close that distance, get the clinch, start using your elbows. The problem is, every single situation that Neil Magny's going to find himself in this fight, Shavkat can damage him a lot to where I don't think Neil can damage Shavkat.
Both of us going with Shavkat Rakhmonov to keep that shiny W going and keep it, making it 16-0 in his career. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. If you have Kazakhstan's Rakhmonov, if you have the Haitian Sensation Neil Magny to go 20-7 in his overall UFC record. A great fight, a great main event coming up. Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot. What a fight. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.